everybody.
Hi.
It says in the program commercial endeavor, which sounds awful, but I pulled a last minute switch on John. So it's not a commercial endeavor at all. It's not about the Film Society. You probably appreciate that. It's called Visitations. It's a true story. December 19th, 1982. Today is the day that I have decided to put down on paper my thoughts and what has happened in my life to this date, as much as I can recall. I don't know if it will be of interest to anyone, and maybe no one will read this, but I think it will be good for me. These are the words of a 66-year-old woman setting out to write about her experiences as a teenage girl in 1930s Honolulu. With its publication in 1988, Olivia, My Life of Exile in Kalaupapa, brought Olivia Robelo Bretta's story and the life-changing circumstances that overtook her to the attention of thousands of readers. As someone born and raised in Hawaii, I was 37 before I learned from my mother that I had a second cousin with Hansen's disease, known to the world as leprosy. Olivia was born June 6, 1916, in Kalaheo, Koloa, Kauai, to Portuguese immigrants, Manuel Robelo and Mary Fernandez. She grew up poor but deeply loved, with her one brother and three sisters. Her world then was a tight-knit, hard-working community, a place where family pride and the magnetic pull of assimilation often clashed. People kept anything potentially embarrassing locked tightly inside the closet. If word got out that someone in the family had contracted such a deadly disease, it would have disastrous effects on their social standing, the way they were treated at work, at school, even at church. Olivia lived most of her life as far from the center of attention as you could get. Her family later moved from Kauai to the Kalihi section of Honolulu, just west of the busiest downtown in the North Pacific. Kalihi was a multicultural hive, as intense then as it is today. The hopeful ways of Chinese, Japanese, and Filipinos, here by choice or brought by force in the mid to late 1800s, were soon followed by the Portuguese, half of my own heritage. Different as they all were culturally, religiously, and socially, these people came as one to work these floating islands. A vivacious 18-year-old in 1934, Olivia Robelo saw herself not in the context of this complex history, but as others saw her. She had become an optimistic and pretty young woman, for whom life held, if not great adventure, at least the chance for love, an expanding family, and a reasonable expectation of happiness down the line. This is not the dream that came true for this particular 18-year-old. Fate cast her on a path of fear and expectation, like something Dickens or Robert Louis Stevenson might have written. I read Olivia's book a few months before I went to meet her, unannounced, in Kalaupapa in the summer of 1989. She wasn't home. I would soon learn that in Olivia's world, not being home meant not being on the island. That July morning, I'd hiked down the 3 miles of hazardous switchbacks that begin on the edge of Pala'au State Park. The majestic Pali Range, 2,000 feet from the upper realms of Molokai, spills into the dry and tangled peninsula below. The traffic of native and non-native birds was accompanied that day by a rush of hot wind moving through the a'ali'i and koa trees. Together they broke the forest's rich non-silence during that first descent of mine. As I stopped to catch my breath, the sound of breaking wood and hooves on stone reminded me that I was not alone. There were creatures here, maybe people too, or spirits, who sensed my presence and maybe disapproved. I'd always felt at home in Hawaii. This was before I grew up and realized that to some, being born in a place never quite means belonging. My white man's fear lifted when I saw ahead of me on the trail the sight of blue sea breaking through the overgrowth. As I moved along a gracefully descending path, now turned to sand, the only sign of human habitation was a rusted shotgun sign that warned, "Kapu, keep out." No entry without written authorization from the Hawaii State Department of Health. I thought of things I would say to any weapon-bearing official or patient or angry citizen I might encounter. Aloha, bra. I'm just visiting a relative here who, number one, I've never met, and number two, isn't even expecting me. Knowing how well that might go over, I thought hard about turning around. I looked back the way I'd come, at the switchback trail, now lost in clouds. I decided to push ahead, forgetting everything I'd heard and read about the fabled, violent history of this place.